Hey friend, good morning. Today is Sunday morning and it's gonna be a busy day at the new house, but I have a couple little things I wanna wrap up here before we head up there. It's pretty early still, but I wanna kind of button up this project before we head up there. If you watched this week, we harvested a bunch of different things for tea, and this is chamomile that we dehydrated up. And when we went to put everything away, this was not quite dehydrated yet. So I wanted to run it in the dehydrator a little bit longer, and I want to get it in our jars. This is the first of maybe 5 or 6 chamomile harvests we're gonna have. So plenty of chamomile for 1 year. This is so easy to grow. It literally grows like a weed. So if you enjoy chamomile tea to drink at night as kind of like a relaxing tea, highly recommend you try growing that. It literally grows like a weed. If you've watched Epic Gardener, he says don't put it in your garden because it'll come back and back and back every year. And that's a problem that I want to have. So the next thing that we did is we dehydrated what's called St. John's wort. This literally is a weed that grows in my garden. I did not plant this. It grows all over my area. And this is a medicinal herb that is supposed to help with anxiety, and that is something I have struggled with on and off. Right now it's pretty good, but I figured since this is something that I can make into a tincture, that is where you infuse the medicinal properties into some sort of alcohol. And I figured since it's in season right now, might as well harvest it and take advantage of it while it's here. So we're gonna do that project. I'm gonna try to harvest more of it if I can find more of it. If not, we're gonna work with that, and that'll be a fun project. I'm gonna grab a big jar because this next thing is gonna take up a lot of space. And this is the first of probably 3 or 4 harvests. This is raspberry leaves. And this is what makes raspberry leaf tea. It's so good. It has so many beneficial properties to it. And it just tastes really refreshing and light. It has like a light raspberry flavor. It's so good. So we're gonna get this jarred up. I don't worry about putting the raspberry leaves on parchment paper because they're so much bigger and they won't fall through once they dehydrate. And here we have our medicinal herb / teas, raspberry leaf, St. John's wort, and chamomile. So this is, like I said, hopefully the first of many harvests. Now what we need to do, this is where my 2 worlds collide. So I'm gonna pack our lunch. 2 days ago, I made sweet and sour meatballs, sugar snap peas from the garden, and white rice. So I'm gonna get this in our bag to take up to the new house. And then I'm also gonna bring a freezer meal because I want something super easy for dinner. See if I can get it to fit in this bag. Yahoo, we did it. The freezer meal that we are bringing is the Italian stuffed peppers, and let me tell you, that is my husband and I's new favorite recipe. I can link it down below. We'll cook it tonight together and I'll show you what it looks like, and it is fantastic. We are gonna head up to the new house now. I got everything packed. Let me show you, we were up there yesterday. Let me show you what we did yesterday while we're on the drive up to the new house. I did not get up early enough to make a baked breakfast. I was gonna do a casserole, didn't have time to do it. So Josh and I are gonna take the opportunity to go pick up some breakfast on the way up there from a local coffee shop, get some coffee, so we have the energy to be very productive today. Please excuse the no makeup and the hair. I was not planning on filming on this day, but we decided to go ahead and try to address this half wall. This has been quite the question mark on what we're gonna do with it. We didn't know if there was wires that run up those pillars or if we're gonna take it down totally or make it a half wall. It's been quite the conundrum. And Josh is making the initial cut on this half wall to see if there are wires that run through this pillar up into the ceiling. There is electrical, there's lights, and let's see if I can show you. This light right here is powered by this button, and it's kind of gonna be a lot bigger project if the electrical runs through those pillars because we wanna cut this wall down than if the electrical went through this wire through underneath the floor. It's gonna be, we're gonna have to pull permits and have obviously electrician come out to do that. So this is kind of the moment of truth, and we're crossing our fingers and hoping there's no electrical in those pillars. We did email the previous owners, and to the best of their memory, they don't remember wires going through the ceiling, but we won't know until we actually cut into it. Just to be safe, we turned all the power off just in case there is power. We borrowed a family friend Sawzall because we don't own one, and we think that that's going to be a much better tool to get the job done. We have excellent news to report. Go ahead, Josh. There is no sign of electrical in there. It is a solid 4x4. And I think, are you gonna pull that down?
Yep. Yeah, there's just a aluminum nail.
Oh, just a nail holding it? Nice. Look at that. That already looks better.
No wiring in there.
Now we know for sure there's no wiring in here, but that already looks 100 times better.
But there's definitely much more play in the wall, so we'll have to cut it down.
Oh, for sure.
Definitely more play.
This wall has been, like I said earlier, quite the question mark. There is no flooring underneath this wall, and so our original plan was to cut this wall in half so we wouldn't have to move the electrical where the switches are if there was no wires running through this pillar. So we were pretty excited about the fact that there were no wires in these pillars, because that meant that the opportunity to cut this wall in half was still there. The reason that we don't really love this wall is because when you open the front door, the first thing you see is this wall, and you can't see out into the main living room and then to the view and beyond, which is one of the main reasons we purchased this house, much less being able to have a really big garden, which I'm super excited for because we're starting to plan that for next year. So as we get into this project, you'll know that this project continues to evolve. You can see it's a little bit wiggly there, and that is just with one of the pillars gone. So as Josh continues to work on removing the second pillar, we realize there's no electrical in that pillar as well. We're pretty excited about the progress. I thought, you know what, let me go ahead and start cleaning up this mess. I've mentioned it before that when you're doing construction, it's hurry up and clean up a mess to then hurry up and make up a mess and then hurry up and clean up a mess. And something like this is pretty satisfying. I don't mind doing these types of cleanups because it feels like you're getting a lot cleaned up in a short amount of time. Gotta love a shop vac because it vacuums up everything. This is typically how Josh and I like to work together. We just try to continue to be doing something while the other person is doing something so that we're trying to make our time as efficient as possible. So now that he has both of them cut down, he took it down, so now we have no more silly looking beams up there.
But I will say, if there's any doubt that they were doing something, let that be rest. We'll put that to rest right now because they were certainly doing something.
Let me show you from a different angle. I don't know if that is going to be able to stay there now because it's pretty wobbly.
We just have different options available to us. So we have two options now. Our original option, kind of what I'm hoping for, would be to just take it to a half wall. So we don't have to mess with the electronics and stuff. But I think it might still be too wibbly wobbly, frankly. We're gonna have to try and secure it some other way, maybe like bolt it down more, which might require us to like take it up anyway and then rebuild it. The other option would be to just remove it all the way. So the reasons we wouldn't remove it all the way though are that there's definitely electrical drilling down through the floor. So we have to have that stuff moved because there are switches. Some of these switches may be three-way switches with other switches on the walls, in which case maybe we can get away with just like capping them. But either way, it is something needs to be looked at. But then also we have the flooring is cut right here. So we have to somehow be able to either patch that or just put like a rug over it or something. Which Becky, you know, that fits within your program, but for me is something that I would constantly think about. So
a lot to think about. Nothing. I mean, that just looks so much better though, doesn't it?
It really does open up the room.
Oh, I love it so much better. So much better.
Oftentimes, structural components are just necessary for other reasons.
So the biggest thing, and what, well, not the biggest thing, but what I was actually proposing to Josh earlier today was we take this wall down, we have a silly patch at the floor, and we live with it until we eventually redo the floors, or I put one of those long skinny rugs right there because that is a walkway from this room or from that area to that area. It's not ideal to have a half wall, and that's what we were thinking. It's not ideal to have a patch on the floor. Now the next step is just thinking and trying to figure out what feels intentional. Just like when we were talking about the trim, when you come up to these obstacles, try to come up with a solution that feels intentional. There might not be a right or wrong decision, but there's one that's gonna feel intentional, and that's the name of the game today.
So just thinking, I don't think I could comfortably push in these light switches without supporting the wall.
There's a significant wiggle. We have a little bit of time before we have to make a total decision whether we are going to make this into a half wall and reinforce it and leave the electrical where it is, or if we are going to have someone come out and rewire those switches and take it out and patch. We do have this flooring in the garage. We have one box of it, and we know what kind of flooring it is because we have a box of it and we know where this flooring was purchased. So we could buy more of this flooring and maybe somehow not just make a silly looking patch, but try to weave the flooring in. This is a floating floor, so I'm not exactly sure. So I will take any of your guys's suggestions or recommendations. Josh and I both are leaning two different ways, and we don't think that one answer is right or one answer is wrong. We're just trying to figure out what the best solution for this conundrum is. And now we're going to head back to present day, and you're going to see what we get done on this busy Sunday. We just got up here, and I wanted to give you an update. Josh was able to go ahead and get the truck started the other day. We brought it up, and I did empty all that firewood that I brought up here the other day, or that I filled in the truck the other day. I got it stacked up over here. There's a few more pieces. Maybe today I'll get to it. It was really, really late when I decided to go ahead and unload all that wood. So we have the wood there, and that's the stuff that I did not stack properly. So that's actually more than I thought that I didn't stack properly. But this is where we're going to store it. And we probably have about twice this much wood still in the shop that I need to bring up. And I'm glad that we kind of, well, I got that project 95% done. And then there's a couple other things that were done this week. Last weekend was the long weekend, or long weekend. It was the 4th of July. And we were up here all day those 3 days. So we didn't come up here during the week because it was just too much. So we had a couple things done over that week, and I want to show you what was done because I've been here, but I haven't shown you all. We got that area that was just the beam that was exposed. It is now sheetrocked and textured. And so Josh can go ahead and put the trim on. He made all the trim for the sunroom. He just didn't want to put it on this window here and the window over here until that was done, just to make sure that it wouldn't get damaged or anything. It's already made, but that looks so much better. I'm glad just to go ahead and have that done. You saw the drama with this wall yesterday, and we have not come up with a solution 100%. Josh and I have decided that we both kind of have different thoughts on what should be done, and we both are okay with either's idea. It's just a matter of figuring out what we want to do, I guess. My job today, I've got a couple jobs, is I'm going to continue to fill in the nail holes and caulking, and then we need to remove some trim in here. We didn't remove all the trim in the dining room and the kitchen when we removed the trim in the rest of the house because we weren't sure if we were going to remodel the kitchen, and if we were going to do the kitchen, we were just going to wait and do it all at the same time. But since we're waiting a little bit on the kitchen, we do need to go ahead and remove the trim. And it's also been kind of nice to have this area not in a complete construction zone. So all around here, I'm going to be removing all the baseboards around here, including on that little seating area, the trim around the windows, the trim around this door, all the base coming along this way, and the baseboards right in here, down this hall, around the pantry door, and the trim around this door. We are going to leave the trim around this window because we know eventually we are going to be redoing this kitchen, even if it's a few years down the road. It's going to be a lot for Josh to try to fit in the trim that we have purchased and kind of configure it around what is existing in here. It's hard to see because there's the beadboard, these cabinets and stuff. And so we're just going to leave this trim here. And then when we remove the kitchen or we redo the kitchen, we'll go ahead and replace the trim in there. But just having it in the rest of the area, it'll make it look a lot nicer. First things first, I'm going to clean up my mess. I should have done this the other day, but it was just a matter of kind of getting the job done and not getting it cleaned up. Sometimes that's how things work. I think I'm going to need to do a little bit more cleaning up around those windows with the caulk, but that was a very good start. The caulking that I was cleaning up earlier, that was a yellow silicone caulk. I'm sure when it was put on, it was clear, but I think with the UV light damage, it had yellowed over time. That was around about half of the windows in the house, and I have taken time to remove all of it from all the windows because we're going to go ahead and replace that with a white caulk that we can paint, and it will just give everything a nice clean finish. I'm doing the same technique I've done with all the other trim removal, where I take a box cutter and I break the caulking seal, then I take a pry bar and I remove it. Try to remove it carefully, but sometimes they fall off, and it just feels so good to get this project done. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I'm glad I went ahead and was able to get to it today. Once I have this trim removed off in this room, the dining room and the kitchen, then we officially have all the trim removed in the entire house, which feels like a huge accomplishment. And we do have a date for painting, so Josh and I are kind of on crunch time on getting this all installed so that we can have the house painted. And this is just me removing the trim around the base of this built-in. My mother-in-law decided to come over and help me remove trim. Oh, perfect. Come on in. Oh, good. You brought a ladder.
Yes.
Do you need help bringing anything else in? Oh, good. Perfect.
I thought I'd bring extra
stuff. Tools?
Yes.
Awesome. Yesterday, while we were working on that half-wall drama, we actually went over to my mother-in-law's house and helped them with a project that they are doing. That is one thing that is so awesome about having family in our area, is that we can help each other out. You guys have all seen, different family members of mine come and help us, and we are always grateful when Josh and I have the ability to return the favor and help our family out with projects that they have, and it just makes things just happen a whole lot faster. And my mother-in-law has great expertise on removing trim, so I greatly appreciated her help. While she is doing that, I decided, you know what, let's go ahead and load the truck up. It has no rain in the forecast, so I thought, you know what, let's go ahead and get the truck loaded up, so at some point in this following week when I have time, I can take the stuff to the dump. In our house, we have round corners, and that can make it more complicated when you are putting the baseboards on. In a minute, I show one example of how some of the corners were addressed in the house, and I forgot to mention this method here. You can see on this round corner, there's this round piece that is a piece you can actually purchase, and you can use that on round corners in homes, or you can do the next option, which I'm about to show you, that was done in this house. But my favorite way is the way that Josh decided to address these round corners. We are making fantastic progress. We are done all the way around here. Renee's working on the last door, and I'm working on the last bit of baseboard here. And I want to show you how Josh pays attention to detail. So the walls in our house are round at the corners, and this piece of trim was done at a 90-degree angle. And this is one way you can do it, and you fill it in with caulk. But let me show you the way Josh decided to do it. Here is one example, and I have not finished this. I haven't caulked it or filled in the nail holes, but he made this extra little piece right here, and what it does is I think it adds a nice little design detail to the baseboard, and it just looks so good and beautiful.
Thanks, son.
You're welcome. I think he does a fantastic job paying attention to detail. Sometimes when we first got married, it would kind of drive me crazy because I'd be like, no one will notice, it looks good enough, it's fine, let's just keep going, let's move forward. And he's like, no, I'm the one that's gonna have to live with it and look at it, and I want it to look nice. And when people come into my home, and if I did the work, I want it to look really good. And trust me, now I appreciate it, because at the end of the project, it always looks so good, and I'm so glad that he pays attention to those details. One thing that I was thinking is, some people say, how can you do construction with your husband and things like that? And we have a lot of practice. We've been married for 7.5 years, and our first house, we completely remodeled everything, every single surface, and we did 90% of the work. And what we have come to realize is that we both want it to look good. We might have different ideas, just like we kind of have different opinions about what to do with this wall. We take each other's opinions into consideration because we know in the end, both of us want it to look as good as possible. And sometimes Josh's opinion wins out, sometimes mine does, and it's not that one wins or loses, it's just that we try to think about it through all aspects. And we try to respect each other's opinion and hear each other out, because like I said, we both want the best thing, and we both have different ideas. And if we don't listen and hear each other's ideas, then we're not gonna know all the options necessarily. And I take your guys' opinions into account too. All right, go ahead, Renee.
All right, here we go.
Should we get a mallet or something?
Maybe. Don't punch you, break your knuckles.
This?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, just do a donkey kick with
Do it.
Why don't you do it?
Because I think you can do it.
Okay.
All right, good job.
Might have been too much.
So this was beadboard on this side, and we're just gonna put flat stock. And so, there we go. Good job, guys.
That was fun. I guess the donkey kick was the way to go.
We officially have all the trim off. So now what I'm gonna do is remove the caulking that is left behind on the paint. I said paint, but really mean the drywall. So we'll be here for a while doing this. I actually like doing this project. Whenever I hear those nails going into the wall, the nail gun, that means that Josh has finished a big part of trim. And I always say that's music to my ears, because that means that progress is being made. And I love it. Another thing that had to be done was the nails that were left in the trim needed to be removed. So Renee was going around and removing those. This is that caulk that I already removed on the bottom part of this window. And you can see how it's yellowed. So I'm going to clean this windowsill. All right, we got this done. Probably one of my least favorite things to do, but it looks a whole lot better once it's done. You can see. Well, it's kind of hard to see, but I know that once it's painted, it'll look a whole lot better. And this just reminds me, at some point I'm gonna have to remember to come up here and dust these because they are dusty. Now on to the next window. Renee wanted to take over that job, which I was more than happy to relinquish to her. So while she was working on that, I'm gonna get going on putting the caulking around the base and filling the nail holes. When I caulk, I have a system, and this is probably not what professionals do, I don't know. I've tried a bunch of different things. I have caulked trim in an entire house before, and this is my second house I'm doing it, and this just seems to work really well for me. So I take a couple paper towels, and these are dry paper towels, and I put those in my hand, and then I take a bunch of paper towels, and I get those ones wet, and I put that on top of the dry one. So I have some moist paper towels and some dry paper towels. And this is my system. And then I have my caulk gun, and the tip of the caulk gun at an angle like that, so that when I am putting it on the baseboards, I've got a nice tip and angle that I'm working with. I've tried using sponges before because a sponge obviously is not disposable and paper towels are disposable, but they get really gunked up and you have to rinse them out, and then you're rinsing that caulk down the drain, and I'm not really comfortable with that, so I just like to use paper towels. We also are going to do every corner here, so I just put a little bit in the corner. After I put my bead of caulk, I take my finger and I run it along the caulk line. Sometimes in these 90-degree corners, it can be a little bit difficult to get my finger in there, so I'll take my damp paper towel and kind of smush it in there. And I like to try to do a really clean job on this so that when you go to paint, it looks really nice and clean and well finished. I want to address something that needs to be addressed because I've gotten a lot of comments about this, and it makes total sense why this recommendation is being recommended to paint the walls before we install the trim. And when we remodeled our first house, we redid all the trim, we put wainscoting, and Josh and I went back and forth, what order do we paint the house? Because we knew we were gonna paint the entire house, walls, trim, doors, ceiling, and we wanted to know, what do professionals do in this situation, whether it's new construction, remodel, what is the most professional way to do it? And we found a YouTube channel that was they were professional painters, and all they did was help home painters or home DIYers learn the proper steps of painting. And we also found professional trim installers, and we learned a lot about trim. And what the recommendation is and what professionals do is you install the trim before you paint the walls. And the reason is you want to install the trim. If it's painted trim, you want to put your caulk line in there. And then what you do is you paint the ceiling, you paint the trim, and then you paint the walls. And the reason you do this is anytime you paint trim, you need to caulk that line. Like I showed you, there was that gap between the wall and the trim. And you want to caulk that. So if I was to paint the walls right now and then install the trim and then caulk it, I'm gonna then have to go and retouch up that place where I put the caulk, because the caulk is white. These walls are not gonna be white, and you'd be able to see a little bit of caulking on the wall. And that's why the order that professionals do it is they install the trim, they caulk it, you paint the ceiling in case anything drips, and then you paint the trim, and then you paint the walls, so that you only have to cut in to the trim one time instead of painting the walls, installing the trim, caulking, and then having to go back and cut in where you caulk that line. Instead of having to go back, instead of having to go back and cut in, instead of having to go back in and cutting in where that caulk line was, instead of having to go back for a second time and having to, instead of having to then, instead of having to go back and cutting in to cover up that caulk line, if that makes sense. So it makes total sense to me why you would think you'd want to paint the walls first, because that's what Josh and I thought we were going to do when we did our first house. Is we were like, of course we should paint the walls before we put the trim in. But then when you start to consider the caulking, and the caulking is a very, very, very important step. It's so important that I take my time to make sure I do it really well, because Josh has done such a good installing it. I want to make sure I do a good job caulking it so that when you paint, you're going to get a beautiful, beautiful finish. When you paint something, your prep work is so important because you can't go back. If it looks messy before you paint, it's going to look messy once you paint. So I try to take my time to make sure the caulk looks just as nice and the patching of the nail holes looks just as nice as Josh's work of putting the actual trim in. So I hope that clears up some confusion on why we're doing the steps we're doing, in what order we're doing them in. While I was working on my project and Josh was working on his project, Renee went ahead and finished up what I had started around these windows. She actually took the blinds off, which I really appreciated, because there was some of that yellow silicone caulking in the corners that I couldn't get off because the blinds were in the way. And so by taking the blinds down, she was able to get all of the rest of that. And that is another thing, is you could use clear silicone caulking instead of the white stuff if you wanted, but that discolors over time. Going back to which order do you paint the walls and trim and everything in, is I don't want to use the clear stuff because I've noticed that that does tend to color over time, and you get a cleaner finish when you use the white caulking and then you paint. And so that is what we have decided to do, and I'm really grateful, Renee, for taking your time out of your Sunday to spend time with us and helping us get this project put together. We just finished eating a fantastic lunch. I was sitting outside just minding my own business, watching a YouTube video, and Josh squeals.
I didn't squeal.
And I was like, what, is there a bug? He's like, this is crazy. You have to come see this. And look how excited he is. And this is pretty cool.
So you've got your classic little modes on here. You know, you got your spray and your normal. But then I accidentally pressed this button. And it does like a little orb.
We've never seen this before.
Around. There's like a little jet in the middle. And then so the jet like takes stuff off in a very precise manner, but then the orb around it keeps it from like spraying all over the place.
That is amazing. I've never seen anything like that.
It's so cool. I was pretty giddy.
Yeah, you were. Josh loves washing a dish before it goes in the dishwasher. I might not be as good about that as he is. I know that I was watching, there's this one lady on Instagram and she was saying there's two types of people in the world. Well, anyway. One of them is the person that basically pre-washes a dish before it goes in the dishwasher, and the other one doesn't do anything, and those two people marry each other. And yeah. All right, back to work. Well, you got me out of the chair. I thought it was a big bug that he was screeching about. Screeching. After we had lunch, it kind of slowed down a little bit. Josh took a rest, and so did I. And then I thought I would go ahead and sweep up the rest of this dust from yesterday's project. The vacuum did not get everything, and I did not want to mop this until after I swept it really well, because I didn't want this drywall dust to turn into some sort of paste of some sort. So Orbit and Tibber were there in the background being my moral support. So Josh and I just both took a little bit of a rest, and now he's getting back to work on a super, super complicated corner. And I'm gonna head home. Instead of making dinner here tonight, I thought, well, it was actually Josh's idea. I think it'll be better if I go down, I get that cooking or stuffed peppers, and then we can just eat at home. Leftovers are at home. I don't have to try to bring a whole thing, cooked pan of stuffed peppers home, because this is something we're gonna have for lunches for the coming week, and maybe dinner tomorrow. I don't know. We'll see. So it's time for me to pack up and go down. I did a little bit more cleaning. I kind of organized a little bit. I put a table over there instead of it being in the middle of this room, just to get a little bit more, I don't know, make it feel a little bit more open in here. And that's just what I did. I just did that, and I think I think it's a little bit better to have kind of like a workstation over there. I'm trying to have this island not be a workstation quite so much. So we're gonna head home, make dinner. Josh is gonna keep working up here, and whenever he's ready to come home, he can come home and dinner will be ready for him. We're home and I have the oven preheated to 400 degrees. We're gonna stick our stuffed peppers in the oven. That freezer meal is basically thawed at this point. So I usually cook it between 350 and 400 degrees. I'm gonna put it in there at 400 degrees covered. I'm gonna go relax, wait for Josh to come home. And then dinner's basically done. The only thing I'm gonna serve with that is I have some peas. These are sugar snap peas we harvested. I have this bag, and then I have a whole bunch more that I harvested the other day. And so that is gonna be dinner, the stuffed peppers and the sugar snap peas, and it's just gonna be a really, really good dinner. That is why I love freezer meals, because even on a day like today, where we were busy, I don't have to worry about cooking at all, and we can still have a beautifully home-cooked meal, and it's just a wonderful thing. So I just want to say thank you for hanging out with us today. I will show you what that looks like when it comes out of the oven, and it's going to be delicious. It doesn't look like the most beautiful dish, but let me tell you, that is Josh and I's new favorite meal. Between the red sauce on the bottom, the bechamel sauce, the sausage, the kale, which if you don't like kale, you could use any other kind of vegetable or you could leave it out, and the cheese, and it's just, oh, it's so, so good. I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to spend time with us. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. If you want to watch a couple more of my videos, I'll just stick them right there. You can go enjoy between now and my next upload.